welcome to another episode of wjlive, powered by the Western Journal. My name is Grant Atkinson. I am an associate reporter here at the Western Journal, and with me today is Michael Austin, the supervising reporter. It happens to be my boss, so...
Yeah, so say nice things about me this whole episode, and you won't get fired.
Yeah, I like that.
Awesome.
I like that. It's a little kind of a threat, but also not fully, so that's good. That's
Good.
So we've got a really fun episode for you guys today. We're going to be talking about a little bit about recent events that have happened with Roe v. Wade and all of that, but more in a broad sense, these events and other things that have happened during the Biden administration, how that is affecting the upcoming midterms that we're going to be happening in November, and primaries have already started happening in many states. So
midterms that look to be a red landslide, a red tsunami, if you will. Red wave just doesn't quite capture what November.
Not quite big enough.
Yeah.
So the first thing that's kind of a great sign for Republicans is having to do with Roe v. Wade, this leak. A lot of people were saying when the leak came out of the decision, the Supreme Court decision that would overturn Roe v. Wade if it were official. It was a draft of an opinion written by Justice Alito. People were saying, maybe the Democrats released this decision. A Democrat leaked it because they feel that they're losing on a lot of other issues, and so they wanted something going to the midterms that they could use as sort of a bludgeon against Republicans so that they could have a way to go on the offensive. But it turns out recent polling from CNN has found that this has not been a very successful strategy, and I think, Michael, you have some specific numbers there.
So the leak of the opinion happened on May 2nd, and it just so happened that CNN did this poll from April 28th to May 1st. So this is just not touched by the news of Roe v. Wade. And that poll showed the GOP generic candidate was up 1%, 45% to 44%. And then they did a poll just after the leaked Roe v. Wade document, after all this hysteria, and the generic Republican candidate in that poll was up 7% over the Democrat, 49% to 42%. So you saw Democratic support go down 2 points after the leaked document, and Republican support go up 4 points. So it's a massive 7-point swing. And we were even saying on this show, I believe on Friday, okay, we're all pro-life. We want to see abortion ended someday, but this may not be the tactic to go for. Well, polling says different. And I think there's a few reasons for that. If a pro-life movement could help us further cement this kind of red wave coming up in November, that's fantastic. But I think there's a few reasons why this had such an effect. One reason is it's not an issue that Democrats can rally behind anymore. And I don't know if there's any issue that Democrats can really rally behind passionately anymore, because they've been so passionate. Everything is the biggest deal in the world. Trump is the craziest, worst fascist of all time. Republicans are these bigoted, genocidal homophobes that are trying to take away all gay and trans rights, LGBTQI plus ABC rights, whatever. They've been so over the top with their rhetoric that now when it comes to Roe v. Wade, when they're going back to the same tired rhetoric of, her body, her choice, all this stuff, just falling on deaf ears. Nobody cares anymore. Everything has mattered this much. You can't all of a sudden say, this is the thing that's going to end all things. No, you've been saying that for years now. Nothing's going to rally that base anymore. And on the other hand, the pro-life movement, there's a lot of people that get rallied behind that on our side. And so, you see a little more passion on the GOP side, and they're all burnt out on the other end.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. An article that was sent to us today, and it was by Reuters, and they were interviewing some people specifically in Arizona and in northern Arizona where we are, that was about asking them sort of about Roe v. Wade, about this leaked court opinion, and about how that would affect how they would vote. And a lot of people who identified themselves as pro-choice or pro-abortion. I mean, pro-choice is really just sometimes people are pro-choice, sometimes it's more of just a nice way to say that they're pro-abortion. It depends on the person.
We're all pro-choice.
Yeah.
As long as, we're pro, you can keep the kid, you can put him up for adoption, you can do these 20 things, as long as it doesn't involve, cutting him up and murdering him and removing him from the womb. We're pro plenty of choices. What makes them different is they're pro-abortion. And unfortunately, there's like an AP News style guide that says you can't refer to those people as pro-abortion. You have to call them pro-choice. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's just sugarcoating it. But anyway, that's what they identified themselves as, which means that they are in support of abortions, at least in some cases, is what they said. And these people, even though they identified themselves in that category, they were saying, you know what, I don't know that I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. A lot of them said that I am undecided who I'm going to vote for. And nearly all of them said the biggest issue was either inflation or the supply chain, inability to get the things that they need to get for their families because these were all mothers. And so I think a lot of the other issues that the Biden administration knew were a thing and that many people were saying maybe they can distract from it by using this Roe v. Wade leaked opinion. If that was their strategy, it appears that maybe they underestimated how much people care about these other things that are affecting them every day.
And I think they assumed that like the middle of the country, it leans more pro-choice than pro-life, but that doesn't seem to be necessarily the case either. There's certainly the middle of the country is not full-on pro-life.
Oh, that's also...
But they're also not pro-choice up until like the moment of birth, which is where Democrats are at right now.
Yeah, that's a point that I think is interesting. I was talking to Joey earlier today, one of our coworkers, and we were looking at a poll, and it was headlined, and it said 80% of Americans are for abortion. So I looked at the poll, and what it actually said was that 32% of Americans were for abortion. Any abortions. All abortions should be okay. Meanwhile, what is that? 80 minus 32. It was like 50-some percent.
Yeah, something like that.
Were for abortion only in specific cases. And more than likely what they mean by those specific cases are rape, incest, life of the mother.
Well, life of the mother, it's a huge one, yeah.
Those are all less than 1% of abortions that happen in the United States.
If you take into account that's so misleading, because if you take into account cases where like the mother and the baby are going to die, most pro-lifers agree with that.
And
that's not an abortion. That's a different thing, but that's what people are talking about in that case.
And most current laws, even in conservative states that have what people call restrictive abortion laws, even those laws, most of them have exceptions for the life of the mother. A lot of them don't have exceptions for rape or incest, but most of them have exceptions. If the mother is going to die or is likely going to die, it has an exception. So anyway, the polling that says that people are so pro-choice, a lot of times it's very misleading.
Yeah, and this is just one. You can add this, and we're going to go through this episode on all of the issues that we're winning on right now, all of the issues that are leading towards this red wave that's coming up. But you could probably just add the pro-life argument to that list, which is something that nobody here expected. I certainly didn't expect that. It seemed to me like abortion was widely, at least somewhat generally popular, but I think the Democrats have overplayed their hand in all of these cases, and abortion is, another one of them. Another issue, I think, moving on, that I think we've been winning on quite a bit is this Twitter free speech stuff. Free speech platform. Do we want free speech? Do we want the government to have its own disinformation board, their Ministry of Truth? It's just another example. They're overplaying their hand. They're saying, no, we can't let you determine what the truth is. They've literally said that. We can't trust the public to find the truth for themselves. So we're going to have to tell you what the truth is. And then after, everyone knows that they were wrong a million times about COVID, about lockdowns, about the severity of the disease. And, I'm not a conspiracy theorist when it comes to COVID by any means. I'm certainly not even the farthest right on COVID issues. But, Democrats were wrong. CDC was wrong. And yet we're going to let the government decide what the truth is when they've been lying to us or at least getting the truth wrong for so long. No, people are waking up to that. And that's just another area where we're winning right now.
I agree. And I think that obviously the Elon Musk news that has been coming obviously is a sign of that. But I think even more than the Elon Musk news, it's the reception of the Elon Musk news, the way that people have embraced, for the most part, Elon Musk. Now you have these leftist people who work at Twitter, who are woke, whatever, who are not excited. But most of the reactions that I've seen are, this is a great thing.
Right.
Free speech is going to be allowed on Twitter. And I know I'm probably getting some biased opinions because a lot of people that I follow are going to be conservative, I'm sure. But it seems like people are generally accepting this idea and thinking it's a good thing, which shows that people want free speech.
Well, I think what's helped us a lot in this particular issue is that, yeah, there are plenty of people that are happy about it. But, you know, there are people in the middle that don't have really much of an opinion. And when they look at us, they're like, okay, they want, you know, more speech. They're not okay with extremism, but they want the ideas to get out there so that they can be combated. Whereas when you look at the left-wing side of the aisle, you know, I have another Twitter account that follows a lot of leftist accounts. And they are shrieking. They are going nuts over this. They're talking like, you know, Nazism is going to be a thing again. They're talking like, oh, these right-wing extremists are going to take over. They're going to be able to do whatever they want. You know, we're going to have a South African apartheid.
Oh, yeah, the New York Times wrote that article.
It's the stupidest article. I wrote a commentary I'm very proud of. Check that out on our site. It's about May Musk and that whole situation. But they overplayed. This is just, yet again, they overplayed their hand. They came off like a bunch of screeching harpies. And all those people on the center, they're like, oh, well, the conservatives seem a little more reasonable. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that it's come to the point where the party who wants free speech and is just asking for all the ideas to be out there, that's the party that most rational people who are independent voters would probably gravitate towards.
Well, and when they all see a guy like Musk, who's, I would say, generally center-right, but, you know, he was an Obama, I'm pretty sure he was an Obama supporter, you know. So when they see guys like that are siding with the right, they're like, okay, maybe the left is a little crazy right now. So, you know, another issue that I think is just killing Biden, we have some polling that also came out maybe from CNN, or it might just be that they covered it, but is the economy, inflation. You know, American voters are blaming Biden for, you know, they're not blaming Putin. They can read graphs just fine, and they can tell that inflation was going up quite a bit before Putin came in, and then it kept going up. So it's not Putin's fault, and everybody knows it, and they're not stupid enough to believe these lies from the White House where, you know, you got Jen Psaki saying, oh, yeah, the Russian inflation or Putin inflation. They're blaming Biden for it. They're blaming Biden for the fact that, you know, they can't afford to buy formula for babies. They can't, you know, there's empty grocery store shelves everywhere. Inflation has been a huge issue, and we all saw it coming from day one of his administration, and we were all saying it, and we were all very good at reporting on that and telling that to the American people. And now, you know, that's just another, you know, we are set up right now to destroy in November, and they're not going to be able to fix inflation by the time November hits, and, you know, they're going to get blamed for all of that.
Yeah, and it's inflation, and it's all the things on top of that, the supply chain, all these things that are making it impossible for people to get, one, things that they want, you know, clothes, whatever goods they want, but in some cases, even things that they need, such as food, which we haven't seen as much, but Biden has warned that more of it is coming. And you mentioned baby food. That's a huge thing that's been going on. Right. Baby formula shortages in America has been a huge problem. There's a report that there was 40% out of stock rate for baby formula across the country. So if you go to a store, you're looking for baby formula, there's a 40% chance that is not going to be there, or at least what you were looking for is not going to be there. And also, it's not just for babies. In addition, there is certain formulas that are amino acid based that are for people who have conditions where they can't eat certain foods because they can't digest it properly. Their body, their immune system will reject it, whatever the case may be. And these people can't get their amino acid, like special formulas either, because the same supply chain issues. And also there's a big plant in Michigan that has been shut down because there was reports of infants getting a bacterial infection from some formula, which is terrible. Obviously, that's not Biden's fault, but what is Biden's fault is that the FDA, they did a review of that facility, and they found nothing a couple of months before all this happened. And then they were getting some tips like, hey, there's some things going on here that we need to investigate. They waited until 4 babies contracted this bacterial infection. Then they did a full-scale investigation, found all these problems, and now it's been shut down for 3 months. So on top of inflation and supply chain, now you have their inability to catch things early now has caused an entire plant to shut down, is making it even worse.
And, you know, whereas a truly conservative, you know, leadership in government would be cutting back on all those regulations that Biden's government, you know, he's leaned more into regulation, just as every Democratic president does, and some Republicans who are just fake conservatives. But what that just shows you is that, look, there needs to be some level of regulation, but not to the degree that we have because they don't do anything. So we were paying all this, we're putting all this funding into this, all this taxpayer funding into these organizations, and we're not even seeing benefits from it. You know, we probably would have caught that stuff without a regulatory agency anyway.
Right.
So yeah, there's that. But, you know, I think aside from inflation, aside from Roe v. Wade, abortion, pro-life, aside from the free speech stuff, the issue that is 100% driving kind of the conservative Republican movement right now is parents' rights. And that's look, the reason you're going to get a red wave, you know, obviously all of these things that Biden has done thus far, it's been one of the most terrible presidencies in U.S. history, which is shocking. I think going into this presidency, we all thought, okay, he'd be relatively centrist. You know, there's not going to be a lot of big headlines. You know, taxes will go up, inflation will probably go up a little bit because Democrats suck at economic issues. But, you know, nothing drastic is going to happen. And it's just been disaster after disaster after disaster. And their biggest disaster has been, you know, supporting this, like, you know, K through 12 sort of leftist indoctrination, teaching kids, you know, teaching secret lesson plans to kids about how they might secretly be transgender. Oh, do you not feel quite right in your body? Oh, well, you're probably a girl, even though you're a biological male. That's probably what it is. And, you know, we'll put a secret closet with some secret girl clothes for you to put on at school so that you don't have to tell your parents about it. That's something that's actually happening. You can look that up and find that. And just all this stuff. And then on the other hand, you got all the CRT lessons. You got kids, basically white kids, being discriminated against and told that they're privileged just for the color of their skin. We did some great reporting a few months back where, you know, we reached out to several families that have been affected by these lessons. And, you know, there's one family in particular. I don't remember what state or what the name of the family was, but it was a foster family. And they had this little girl who happened to be white. You know, she used to grow up in super abusive homes. She talked about how she used to be forced to eat cat poop because her parents wouldn't provide her any food. And it was getting to a point, these CRT lessons in school, where, you know, all of her friends before all this stuff happened to be minorities. And after they had learned all those lessons, she was no longer allowed to sit with her black and brown friends. They considered her to be a white oppressor, and they were, you know, she was getting bullied at school. She was getting forced to eat by herself at lunch. That's the type of stuff that they're doing in schools. And so Republicans and conservatives, they've been exposing this stuff over the past, 2 years? And now it's like the biggest winning issue. And Democrats and Biden, they won't back off on it. They're like, no, we need to teach CRT. We need to teach gender theory. And it's like they want us to take over everything.
I think that's what's most incredible to me is that you saw this really, I thought, come to a head in the Virginia governor race when Glenn Youngkin won this CRT, this parents' rights as far as teaching the trans and homosexual agenda in schools, all these sorts of things. You saw those issues not single-handedly, but hugely contribute to a win for
pretty
Glenn Youngkin.
Substantially.
Yeah.
They had a massive effect.
And so he wins, and at that point, I think, okay, maybe the Democrats are going to realize this isn't their strategy, and they haven't. They've doubled down on it. I mean, you see it in Florida with Disney. All these companies, all these leftist organizations, keep trying to force this both CRT and the trans agenda. And both those things are hurting them, and they're not learning. They just keep doing it over and over again.
Well, and, you know, for the past, I don't know, handful, not quite a decade, but somewhere around there, amount of years, you know, it seemed kind of hopeless that, like, we were going to continue to head in this progressive direction in all of our cultural institutions. You know, schools were going to continue to get that way. Disney and entertainment was going to continue to get that way. But they're losing now. Like, Disney is losing boatloads of money every day because people hate Disney for having a really weird sexual agenda that they want to teach kids about these ideas. And, you know, it's not just not popular among conservative parents. It's not popular among, you know, people that are quite liberal and pretty much everyone that's a centrist. So they're just, and they can't help themselves. You know, they believe in this stuff. This is their religion, is this gender theory CRT stuff. And they're going to continue to push it. And I don't know. I'm guessing it's not going to back off until we take literally all of the branches of government, which it seems like we undoubtedly will. So.
I think another sign of how unpopular this is, in my mind at least, is you see the organizations that have stopped taking this sort of leftist approach are the ones that are kind of thriving. One that comes to mind to me is the NBA. I've been reading how the NBA's playoff ratings are up 18 to 20%, somewhere in there. And if you think about it, I've been watching a lot of NBA playoff games, and I haven't seen Black Lives Matter plastered all over the court. I haven't seen all this leftist stuff. They've just been playing basketball, and guess what? People are now watching it. Meanwhile, Disney is doubling down on this, and less people are watching Disney. So you just see that the consumer doesn't want this stuff forced on their throat, down their throat, and when it's not, they want to watch that more.
And it's happening, it's happening all over entertainment. It's not Disney, you know. There's all these leftist shows that they're like, well, we don't have to worry about the story as much as we do including as many queer LGBT plus characters as possible. Then nobody's watching those shows. They're getting canceled, and everyone's fleeing to, whatever's, apolitical. That's a really good observation about the NBA stuff. I watch a lot of basketball, and that's so true. It used to be the last couple of years that like every commercial had a social justice message, between breaks, and at halftime they'd have all this stuff, and the players would be wearing all these signs that talking about social justice. And that's like, I haven't seen one example of that. I mean, every now and then there's a really stupid commercial they do.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like a little bit sprinkled in there, but they've dialed it back quite a lot. Yeah. And I think that has a direct correlation to why their ratings are better than they were when they were forcing all that stuff.
And DeSantis, by hitting back at Florida by revoking their special districting rights, that's had a huge effect as well. We ran a story a couple weeks ago, I believe, that basically the Wall Street Journal reported that executives at large American companies all over the country are running scared from this political stuff. They're not quite all, on the, well, we need to not get involved in politics at all train, but they're headed that way. And, they're second guessing themselves. And one thing that a few executives said was, we don't want to be the next Disney. I mean, we're winning, man. That is conservatives winning in the culture for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say, because Ron DeSantis took that special district away, that's why they're scared, and that is partly why they're scared. But I think another reason that they're scared is because they see that the audience doesn't want these leftist ideas. I've seen multiple articles circulating on social media from advisors to companies who are saying, like you said, not to completely stay out of politics, but these super far left ideas that are incredibly controversial, they're saying, don't push these anymore because you're going to lose customers. And I think that is direct. It's because conservatives are making it known that they don't want these things. That's a direct result of the conservative movement saying we're not going to take this sort of indoctrination anymore.
And it's a massive disadvantage and weakness that you can have as a company, because that gives the opportunity to people like, the Daily Wire keeps creating companies in all kinds of industries. Whenever there's a company that goes super woke, was it Harry's Razors or something like that? They went super woke. And so the Daily Wire launched a razor company that was just like, hey, we're not pushing a conservative message, but we're not woke and we don't hate you for what you believe. So buy our razors. Now it's a massively successful razor company that's probably doing better than Harry's at this point. They certainly have a larger following than Harry's does. And you're just going to continue to see there's a huge competitive advantage to people. If they want to enter any of these industries, just tell people, hey, we don't hate you like these other wokesters do. Come buy our product.
You don't even have to be, like you said, an outwardly conservative company. You just have to be a company who says we're not outwardly leftist and we're not going to hate you if you are a conservative.
So, that's the crux of the movement right there. That's why we're winning. That's why it's going to be not a red wave, a red landslide, I think is how we put it. Red tsunami's becoming popular. I don't know if that's catching on. I checked a lot of our titles on site, and apparently nobody reads the titles that say red tsunami. So maybe it's not catching on as much as we'd like to think.
Maybe we need to make T-shirts, really get the movement going.
Red tsunami. We were joking in the office the other day that we should keep ramping up the level of it should be red supernova and then red singularity and then all these other things. But it's those two things. It's parents' rights, and then also school choice. Not letting the government determine what your kids are taught, letting you have the option to choose that. All that stuff. And then the last thing that I think is really pushing us over the top is just Joe Biden's weak leadership. He's had, 3 foreign policy disasters already, in his first term. You got the Ukraine-Russian conflict. He's super weak with Russia. All of the things he did at the beginning of his presidency, including closing down pipelines, that kind of gave Russia the opportunity to do some of the things it's doing now. You had Afghanistan, that withdrawal. I mean, nobody, a huge majority of Americans blame Biden for how bad that went. Rightly so. It's obviously his fault for rushing the withdrawal, for trying to meet a date rather than making sure everyone was safe.
Right.
And okay, if that takes that takes an extra year and a half, fine. At least nobody will die. He didn't give a almost slipped up and said a naughty word there. That was close. He didn't give a flip if how safe it was, as long as he hit that date. And then you got the border crisis. You got illegal immigrants coming over in droves because they know Biden has all these policies that will let them sneak in and just be able to stay and not get immediately sent back. So, just putting all that stuff together, it's looking good for us. And all Republicans have to do is maintain the course and stay strong on their messaging. They cannot be trusted to do that, but that's all they need to do. And, if you get a guy like DeSantis in there running for president, then that's a leader that'll keep us, on the straight and narrow. So
yeah, and I think the good news is for these midterms is you don't really have to pick any sort of presidential candidate before the midterms.
Right.
We're not going to have to decide,
Yep.
Is it going to be Trump? Is it going to be DeSantis? Whoever. Really, we're just going to have to get behind these state Republicans who are running in state races, or even if they're national elections, but for a senator or something like that. Everyone can get behind them, whether you want Trump or you want DeSantis or you want somebody else to be the presidential candidate. All Republicans can get behind, red candidates throughout the United States during the midterms.
And whether he ends up running for president or not, I think it is clear in these midterms that when people are looking at whether they should vote for a Republican, I think they do look to DeSantis as sort of the de facto leader.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of the party I'm voting for, and then they look at DeSantis. So I mean, that's the biggest thing right there. Is what he's done is creating this victory. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up today for WJ Live. Things are looking good for Republicans.
Yes.
We've got a red tsunami hopefully coming. We're going to try to make it catch on, so we'll keep saying it. But if you want to be a part of that, if you want to support what we're doing and the changes that Republicans are making and that we have been able to sort of encourage here at the Western Journal and bring you news about, you can go support us at www.westernjournal.com/join. There's a few options there for you to become a member, and that really just helps us be able to do the journalism that we've been doing, the things that we've been reporting on. We haven't single-handedly caused this red wave by any means, but being able to get that news out there and tell people what's going on.
The Western Journal has an influence. We're out there. We do lead the nation on some narratives, and it's exciting. It makes it really a great place to work. But yeah, so help us support us in doing that.
Yeah, that's great. We really appreciate any support you guys can give us. Another way you can support us is just going to YouTube or Rumble, hitting that subscribe button, hit that little bell icon so it'll notify you when we go live. That way you'll know every time we're having an episode talking about hopefully good topics like today, how Republicans are going to have hopefully a good midterm. So hopefully we can keep bringing you things like that. If you're interested in what we're doing, just hit that subscribe button and that notification icon. We will be back here on Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern to bring you the latest news of the day. Until then, have a great day.